Welcome to Living Mosaic. My name's Martha Holden. I'm a member of the Spark of Humanity Network. Living Mosaic is a program to support, well, based on the understanding that there is a solution to the current sickness, heartbreak, ugliness in this world, on this planet, and that we are each bits of this, like a living mosaic. We're each essential, we're each unique, and we each have our own unique role within this living, dancing mosaic, ever-evolving mosaic. So our hope here is to support each other in letting go of everything that gets in the way of our being moved. This is not, it takes some brains, but it's not primarily a cognitive function, except for remembering, perhaps. It's not something we figure out. It's something we trust in, have confidence in, surrender to, that we allow, that we are willing to have happen, to have it, to be moved, to be transformed, to be brought into our optimal relationship with what is happening in the world right now. And so that's the idea of what this is about. This is the next to last show in the season. The topic today is about aware. That's what we'll be talking about. It actually comes in 3 sections, but before we get into the 3 sections of aware, there's to be able to productively respond to this process, to participate in this living solution mosaic thing. We of the Spark of Humanity Network have a practice, I suppose you could call it a spiritual practice or a spiritual discipline, that for us that we have to offer as a way of easing our movement into our role in the mosaic. And next year, in other words, in 4 short weeks, the title will be changing to Living Spark. So how we live into our spark of humanity that each one of us has, and how we allow that to transform us as we claim our sparks, transform us so that we more easily, gracefully, less painfully are guided into our place. And that will be hosted by Danielle, who's on the screen in front of me, but I don't know whether you can see her. But I can. So aware. There are 3 different facets of that I want to touch on. The third one is what's to me most important to try to get across, to convey. The second one is probably the most important for all of us. And the first one is sort of like, oh yeah, ho-hum, that again. So the first ho-hum, oh yeah, that again, aware I'm thinking about is the awareness of the difficulties, the pain, the tragedy, the horror, the heartbrokenness of the scene around us in this world. Some people, well, we block our awareness in all 3 of these levels. We tend to block awareness, maybe in all levels possible, because we can't cope. It's too difficult, it's too much, we don't know how to respond. I'm basically going to crawl under the covers and duck my head in and maybe suck my thumb, or try to find a lollipop that lasts for the rest of my life. That is, I find, listening to people, it's really an individual choice. Some people I know are like news junkies. They feel it's very important for them to know what's going on everywhere all the time. And of course they can't. which is probably frustrating for them. Then there are those who have figured out a way to sort of have some boundaries about the news intake from the popular news media or the unpopular news media. And so there's that level of awareness. Myself personally, just where I am, I stay just enough aware to the image I use is to keep my tail feathers smoldering. So I am willing to continue dedicating myself to the work of the Spark of Humanity Network and the Living Mosaic Project and whatever else the Spark of Humanity Network is up to at the moment. Because that's the only way that I have for me, in my own quirky way, is the best way that I know of responding to the pain, the heart sickness, sometimes the belly sickness, of the awareness of sort of the earth level situation. So that's number one, awareness. Number two, not in order of priority, just in the order I'm talking about them. Number two is to be aware of ourselves, our own thought processes, our feelings, and to develop a relationship with, to become aware of them and open to them, and no shame, no blame, and begin to experiment with and claim our capacity to shift our thought pattern. Many of us find a short prayer or an affirmation or just something to get out of, like using myself as an example because I'm the easiest one to use. Now, when I like to have pleasant vibes going on inside me. I like to be thinking about pleasant things. So generally, my habit has been to think about food. I like food. One of my ongoing questions is, what's for the next meal? You know, what's for lunch? What am I having for breakfast? What's for supper? If I happen to be having 3 meals that day. But that, you know, think about, I've got this, I could go and get that, and I could put this with that, I could do da-da-da-da-da. And that is just blocking me off. I'm not saying it's bad, because at times we all need protection. We all need to take some space from everything else in the world. But that's keeping me from, like, affirming. I could just change that every time I find myself thinking about a toasted cheese sandwich with lots of mustard and a nice ripe tomato slice, or tomato if you prefer. I could say, I'm a unique and essential part of the solution. I could just remind myself of that. Or I could claim my spark, which we can only do in reference to somebody else's spark. I could connect and affirm through my spark. I connect with affirm the spark of somebody else. And just, you know, somebody I care about, somebody I don't care about, anybody, to break the cycle of the food in my head. That sort of awareness. Now, there are, I know, because I'm familiar with them, much more toxic things to be thinking about or perseverating on or just sort of using it as a default than food. However, which it's good as far as it goes, but to shift that over, or to accept that we have the capacity to shift that over, and that we're willing to try. And it's a lot like learning how to play a musical instrument. You know, you have to practice. Who knows why my young cousin wanted to play the violin? I mean, she said she liked the sound. Who knows why I wanted to play the trombone? But you know, at some point you want to sing or whatever comes to us, And so at first it's just, who knows what's carries us through those first weeks and months until we can make a sound that lets people stay in the house with us as we're practicing. But eventually we gather some facility and we're able to do it. But that getting over those first little bits is practicing, training the brain, as I like to call it, letting the brain know it's not in charge. There's something that is more crucial, certainly, to our finding our growing into our places within the mosaic than our brains. There's some innate, we can use spark language. Our spark knows where we belong. So if we're claiming our spark and connecting and affirming with the spark in others, so their defenses are being eroded, their bafflement is being clarified, their distortions are being released. At the same time, our defenses are being eroded, like it or not, and it's just part of the process. So that makes it easier for us to be drawn into our place within the solution. So that being aware of, just being willing to be aware of what's going on in our brains, being aware of our thought process, which for some people may mean, start with awareness of our feelings. I don't know, maybe. For me, I haven't got that figured out yet. I think for different people, it goes in different order. Some people start with thought, some people start with feeling. But the awareness that there is something about that is shaping our perception, shaping our attitudes, and therefore shapes our experience. So once we get that and are willing to practice it, like practicing the ukulele or the nose harp or the didgeridoo or whatever we happen to be practicing, we get an edge on it. And that's, may I assure you, that's worth continuing. I find that there's progress that gets made, and the results are multiple. They're exponential. In my experience, and I've talked to others who use different language but say essentially the same thing. So I encourage enough awareness of the local earth plane scene to be motivated to do the inner work, to have the awareness of the inner climate, the thoughts, the feelings, the reactions, the fears that come up, the triggers. It's being aware of that and knowing that it's sort of like skiing a grand slalom course. We can go through. We can learn how to make our way gracefully through all the thoughts and feelings that come up. We don't need to be scared of them. If we have the grace to keep our mouths shut and keep our hands in our pockets, or at least not pulling out knives and guns, it's okay. We can find how to deal with them. So the third awareness that I wanted to bring up is an awareness. It's a more subtle, most subtle of the three, of what's going on in the larger sphere, beyond earth plane, the cosmic forces, the shifts, the paradigm shifts, the cultural shifts, the movements of big scale processes going on, changes, surges in energy, evolution happening. In one of our pieces of literature, we talk about we're in a process of evolution. And we believe it's toward, to use the simplest language, in terms of words, but not so different, simple in concept, a common consciousness, so that we become aware, subtly perhaps, of the consciousness of other beings around us that are not necessarily human. And we become aware of our membership in a cosmic community. We are participating in a life that is multifaceted and that is way beyond this galaxy. And it is alive, and so it changes, and it moves, and it flows, and it evolves. And we are in a time of that. And that has some people very nervous and uncomfortable, because the ground beneath their feet is not the ground their parents told them would be stable for the rest of their lives, or they got this idea. It's changing, it's growing, it's shifting. And we are participating in that. We can want to sit this one out, but our involvement in it, our participation in it, has an effect on it of how gentle it is, how humane it is, or how disruptive and painful it is. So we're not in control of it, but we're participants. We're living members of this process. And to become aware of that, allow ourselves to become aware of that, to look for the hints, because they can be very subtle, and they're a little coincidence. Oh, could this be it? Maybe this is, and to let go of whatever skepticism we've been trained to, because I think it's I don't think we're born skeptical. I think our parents or our educators feel that this is the safest way to be. Society does, so learn how to be skeptical, kid. But get beyond that and begin to just see, it's a couple weeks before we all get together again. And just begin to sort of open the eyes behind your eyes. Open the eyes of your heart, open the eyes of your gut. And just allow yourself, this is just a suggestion, of course, I'm not ordering you to do this, of course not, but I'm just allow yourselves, consider being willing to allow yourselves to become aware if there is something going on. Maybe there isn't. You get to discern this and see this for yourself. Being willing, open-minded, open-hearted, just being willing to see whether you begin to sort of like dust balls gathering under the couch. Do you begin to see these little furry things getting together and beginning to say, oh, it could be. Personally, what I've found is that the more I allow this awareness, the more courageous or foolhardy I am in mentioning it, the more the coincidences happen, the more, to use one term, grace there is in my life. And it's subtle, and I can't manage it. And I can't make it happen. I'm not in charge. It's such a treat. It's such a relief. There's something bigger in charge than me. Oh, isn't that nice? It's so relaxing, such a relief. And it definitely, it feels friendly, definitely interesting. And as one of my old friends said, and it's the only game in town. So, do we want to just, show up and engage in the only game in town and just be willing and explore it. Because for each one of us, we are so unique. You know, it's different. It's a different role. It's a different route. All I can do, all we can do is encourage each other and support each other and trust and allow ourselves to become more aware of this force. This, we're calling it a surge. More aware of it so that we can speak and act and live with greater conviction and indeed greater comfort, because there's some wonderful peace in living into one's sense of the truth. I've thought about this for a while because I was raised in situations where I felt I needed to justify myself. And one of my teachers said, "Martha, you do not need to justify yourself." But this living into what seems to me to be a truth, I realize, you know, I'm not asked to be successful. My job isn't to be correct. My job isn't to have it all right. My job is to be faithful. My job is to be open, to experience what I'm guided to experience, what lands on my plate, trusting that it's here to form me so that I can better fit into my role in the living mosaic. And I may be totally off my gop. But if I am honestly and with integrity off my gop, that may stimulate, you know, who's it's next door to say, "No, you're entirely wrong. You're off your gop, lady," which is just what needs to happen, perhaps. You know, I don't know. That's not my job. I don't need to figure this stuff out. I just need to do my little bit, my little tiny infinitesimal bit of being totally true to myself and what I'm called to. How's that for a job, huh? Same job you have, nothing else. It's all the same. So I'm going to be quiet for a minute and allow things to sink in. If you have a question, loft it at me and I'll try to respond it. And then I'll wrap up with the usual gratitudes and wish you a good fortnight. Thank you for joining me. Remember, three awares. Earth plane, what's going around, maybe what you read in the newspaper if you do that or watch the news. And enough, monitor that for yourself. So maybe it's just enough to keep you moving, keep you engaged, but not enough to overwhelm you or distract you or corrupt you, because there's a lot of opinions out there. Second is yourself, your feelings. I'm about to sneeze. Your feelings, your thoughts, your habits of response. What's going on here, what's going on here, and your ability through your desire to be part of the solution to maneuver your way through those things. And then the awareness of the larger picture and our membership in that, our participation in that. So thank you for joining me, and thank you for the good folks at ARCA as always. Always a joy to be here, and thank you for Danielle, who's taking over in 4 weeks on a slightly different note, Living Spark. And thank you for everything. Take care.